Okay. We have other people joining us in the blue jeans.
I see that Jackie is here, and then we'll wait and see if other people join. Um, but as I mentioned, if people are joining, they can submit questions in the chat box to the right, and we're happy to go through and address those. You can also feel free to just unmute your microphone and speak up directly if you have any questions there. Hi, Jackie. I see you're the first one to join, so you might get a customized one-on-one session here. But to have you. I know that lots of people end up tuning into these later too, once we've had the recording posted. But Jackie, do you want to make sure if you have any specific questions you want addressed? We're happy to hear from you directly, or you can type them in the chat box. And just for context, so my name is Amy Ahern, and then I'm joined by Jessica Martin. We are both on the Plus Acumen team and work closely with our Impact team, which implements lean data in the field. And no worries if you're behind and just getting back on track. We did get some questions submitted by other people, and so we can tick through some of those too, and just to make sure that we get to everything that's been submitted. So if any questions come up, Jackie, as you listen, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we can get started on some of the things that were in the discussion forum. But Jessica, having done this once yourself and done a lean data analysis, do you have any general tips on what people should be thinking about as they get started? And then I'll pull up the other questions.
As they get started, in what phase?
Probably scoping a lean data survey for the first time. Hi, Nolan. It's great to have you joining. You can feel free to add questions or chime in directly at any point.
Yeah, I think you might have a better sense in terms of the scoping piece of this, because I've been more focused on sort of the data collection and analysis. But I know just working with our impact team, the scoping part is really, really important, and understanding what are the big strategic questions, or even sort of immediate strategic questions you want to answer with your lean data survey is really important. So getting all the people around the table that are involved with that, and our stakeholders, and sort of using the data that you'll be collecting is good. And I know in the past, or traditional approaches, there's a lot of data that's collected and everyone wants to say, but I think as sort of the facilitator of the lean data approach, you really need to help the team hone in on what the survey is for. Like, are you trying to understand why certain students are moving on from your program successfully versus dropping out? Or is it something else? And if it is that, like, let's focus on just the 10 to 15 questions that will help us answer that, versus collecting any and every type of data that you can under the sun, to appease everyone on the team. And I think there's probably more we need to learn about facilitating that process, but you, as sort of the lean data facilitator, need to be that person to, like, kind of backstop what questions you should be asking, what questions you can leave out in this survey, and how you help that team focus and in on those key strategic questions that you're trying to answer.
Yeah, that's great. I think whenever our impact team sits down with an entrepreneur for the first time, what they're really trying to figure out is what is the biggest strategic business priority that they're trying to address at that point, and then make sure that they understand the connection between lean data and how it can help them start to gain insights to address that key strategic priority. I think on the Plus Acumen side of things, we are still even finding that linking decision making to survey data continues to be a challenge. So even if you think you've nailed this perfect survey, you really need to kind of gut check and make sure that every question you're asking can be used to directly inform decision making.
I think to add to that too, our director of lean data, Tom Adams, made a good point that even when you're getting started, it's hard to directly link like survey questions or a survey to decisions because we do make decisions in very complex ways and it's not a linear process. But just to start thinking in that way and using the data, revisiting it, being disciplined about like what you were looking to learn and what you're learning from the actual data is in itself a good process to start to build in more of a data driven culture. So even if like at first you don't sort of collect data that links to like really big important decisions that you need to figure out, that's fine. This is all sort of building the foundation of building in more of a data driven culture.
That's great. And for those of you who just joined us, we're just talking briefly about kind of what you should consider as you're first getting started implementing a lean data approach. So that's either when you're sitting down with kind of your managers and you need to tell them about lean data, or the entrepreneur that you're working with, or whoever your stakeholders are, to try to figure out first what are your strategic priorities and then how you can link that to the kinds of data that you need to collect. So that's what's kind of covered in the first module of the course for those of you that might have gotten through that. And then we're happy to have you post introductions in the chat box to the right if you want to share more about the Lean Data project that you are working on or any specific questions that you might have. And we also had some others submitted in advance by people who will be tuning into the recording. And to start to get to one of those, people were asking about the second module of the course where how you draw a customer journey map. And so I don't know if some of you have already done this exercise, but the point really is instead of adding data collection as this other cumbersome step that you have to make your customers or your patients or your students or whoever you're serving go through in addition to the services you're providing, instead to really think about all stages where your company or organization already interacting with your customers or clients and figure out how to leverage those touch points to effectively just collect additional data as they're going through those existing interactions with your company or organization. So this customer journey map is really just thinking about how would you draw out all of those stages of interaction. So in the course, I believe we used the example of the ambulance company Zakitsa, which is an Acumen investee company that operates a fleet of ambulances across states in India. And so what we did when we worked with that company was thought about all of the times that the customer was already interacting with the ambulance company. And that was typically when they're calling for an ambulance for the first time, all the way to when they're transported to the hospital, and then eventually after, when they get a follow-up call from the company's phone banking service to follow up on how the outcomes of the hospital visit went. And so in that case, those touch points could then be leveraged to collect impact data on top of the existing business operations. So rather than adding in a whole additional layer of impact surveying, they just had their existing phone bank add a few impact questions that asked about the poverty level of the customers they were serving and the types of demographics for those customers. And they collected data in that way that helped them see that actually the majority of their patients were under the poverty line, and they were also a lot of pregnant women, which they didn't know before. So it's a way to just leverage the existing customer company touch points to add impact data collection. And you can do that using a customer journey map that just helps you more strategically kind of map out where all of those existing interactions are already taking place. Jessica, do you have any other kind of examples or stories that might illustrate how people should approach thinking through where they should be collecting impact data?
I actually just spoke to a team yesterday that they run like workforce development trainings and interventions that span years, like first and second year. Hello. And they're the second year after one of their, I guess, interactions or programs, they have like monthly coaching sessions with people. And so they just integrated data collection continually in those coaching sessions. And so it's not an online survey, it's not SMS, paper based, it's actually person to person, and they've built a system to collect pieces of data throughout those coaching sessions. Um, I've also, I guess, let's see, a lot of our students, or a student I just talked to was doing a lean data survey for a company that is basically helping to streamline the milk supply chain in India. And so farmers bring milk to a collection sort of depot or aggregator. And at that point, they outfitted the people collecting the milk with tablets to collect some data points from the farmers that are supplying the milk. So just like not comprehensive examples, but just little points, data points that I've heard from people in terms of how they're building this type of data collection into existing operations instead of having to do a completely separate survey experience for people.
That's great. And I want to make sure we address some of the questions of people who might be tuning in live. So Yoshi, Nalwyn, Alan, Jackie, great to have you all joining us. If you do have questions, you can feel free to unmute your microphone and speak directly, or type them into the chat box. And it can really be addressing any stage of the course, whether you're just getting started and might feel like you're behind, it's totally fine. We're happy to address those kind of questions. Or if you have specific questions about how to develop a survey or how to actually execute a lean data approach, happy to address them here or point you to further resources to help you do that. So I'll give you a few minutes just to think about if anything is coming to mind while we look at the other questions that were submitted in the discussion forum.
Hi, Amy. Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, we would love that. Thanks, Jackie.
Hi. Fantastic. We're still. I'm at the very beginning of the course because I was poorly for a while, and so I'm just catching up. And I literally just signed on to do some work and catch up, and saw that this was happening. So I'm sort of in at the deep end of it. We're working on creating an interactive community map to map the UK's 200,000 plus charities. And what I'd really like to do is use the lean data method to capture information right the way along the journey. So actually, as people are on the website, they might get a pop-up question that just asks them for something, for some feedback right there in the moment, so that it's actually during their journey while they're using it. And maybe then if they come back, or, if also, is there a question we haven't thought to ask them, and ask them what they think that might be. But I don't know if that's been used, or if there's a platform that can help us to do that and integrate it into the actual website. Any thoughts?
So I think that's a great first start, because like we mentioned, one of the key premises of lean data is collecting it kind of during existing touch points between your organization and the customer or the person that you're interacting with. So embedding kind of a pop-up survey like right at the moment where they are interacting with your product or service is a great idea. And I know that you kind of see those on lots of different websites probably where they have pop-up survey questions. I think in terms of design principles to keep in mind, you want to make sure that it's probably not just like a general feedback question, but it's something where you can get really targeted information that will help you inform a decision that can improve the map that you're creating. So just being very intentional about like the one question that you're probably putting there, because I don't imagine it's going to be a very lengthy survey that you want to pop up. And then in terms of specific tools, we do have a list in the course that is a kind of crowdsourced Google Doc, mobile, SMS, online, phone banking kind of survey tools. So there might be some suggestions there, although I'm not sure I've seen tons of web-based survey tools pop up, but Jessica, you might be able to chime in with more information.
Yeah, we've actually been looking at some stuff for Plus Acumen's website, and the company that I think we've honed in on that we like is called Intercom. I don't know the pricing, but there's also a lot of other companies that provide this little chatbot type of service on your website. And we've actually worked with a team on a lean data project where they integrated our lean data survey into their chatbot. So basically a link, we asked them to take our survey via their chatbot. When people landed on the page, they got a like, hi, can you give us feedback type of message. I feel like these are usually to help people navigate your website or to get feedback on specifically like the website or landing page. So I would just think about like what is it specifically that you want to test or get feedback on from people that the chatbot is in service of, and if that's the right way or approach to get that feedback.
And Jessica, that tool was called Intercom?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll make sure there's a link to that in the course as well. Great, and hopefully that was helpful, Jackie, as you start to dig into the materials. I think the specific module that's about kind of tools and technology is module 3. So that should be where the crowdsourced Google Doc of the different survey instruments can be found too, in case that's helpful. Thanks for the question. Anyone else? We're happy to make sure we get your questions answered here since you took the time to tune in live.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, good. So I was wondering if you can describe a little bit about your consulting services. Even though I'm just working with nonprofits in the US, in Japan, I'm mostly on the side of providing grants, but I'm very interested for the organizations to make some measurements or try to quantitatively and qualitatively. And but sometimes I feel that, say, some external sort of help could be useful. But I'm usually working with pretty small organizations. So I was wondering if, say, Acumen provides services, like if it's usually with larger organizations or it can vary.
Jessica, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So Yoshi, what are the sizes of the organizations that you're giving grants out to?
Oh, so
In terms
the
of like budget?
yeah, their budget is usually from, say, a few $100,000 to their annual budget is to maybe $1 million plus.
Okay.
But the kind of grants I make is usually for research. Try to start with small grants like a $20,000, $30,000 US dollars, because I don't want to deep dive into a larger survey and it happen to fail.
Yeah. And what are the biggest challenges you're facing right now, or important things you're trying to figure out in terms of understanding your portfolio's impact?
So, many organizations do not really measure much. And like I say, food pantries, food banks that I'm working with, they have agreed to do a survey. So I'm working on it with them. But say, there are so many things I'd like to find out, but of course, we need to resist the temptation because they are not gonna, the respondent, first of all, may not want to be really contacted because there seems to be a lot of stigma about receiving like a food kind of services. And the constituency, even though I think it makes sense to do online things, and I designed it in the course, but in reality, I think a lot of recipients in Japan, even though they may have smartphones, but the elderly generation is not going to be able to answer surveys online or SMS. So
cool, got it. That's helpful to know. So Yeah, so Acumen's lean data team does provide lean data consulting services for external clients. And in the past, that's been for foundations, for other impact investors. They've surveyed a portfolio of another investor's investees because they wanted to get sort of baseline metrics on sort of the same things across their portfolio, like Acumen's doing for itself. Um, and we've done it sort of for one-off external clients that are like social enterprises looking to understand and improve their impact. And so those projects usually run 20,000 plus, depending on if it's one project or a series of projects where we're surveying through 30 different companies or nonprofits across a portfolio. And yeah, that's anywhere from the foundation, like where you are making grants, usually pays for that, or individual kind of companies. And one thing that I feel like is might be interesting to you in terms of the approach Acumen has taken with our own portfolio companies, because it's always kind of like there is a stigma where the funder goes to their investee and asks for data. They don't want to sort of give that up. But our team has spent the past year making data offers and just going to our companies and saying, hey, we have these data resources and these people that could help you do surveys. What questions, what are the big questions on your mind? What strategic questions are you trying to answer to help move your business forward in the next like 6 months to a year? And so that's how we've initiated some of our projects and started to build trust with our companies, and have collected data that they wanted to collect. Not necessarily like things that we want to know. We've been able to slip in things that we wanted to know, but it also are questions that add value to their business or helping them understand their impact. So that's the approach we've taken. Instead of making a data request, which is sort of the traditional approach, we've been giving data offers, and that's helped us to build relationships with our companies and show the value add of what this approach can help them understand, and how it can help move their business forward, grow their business, and understand whether they're actually making the impact that they're trying to make. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit more of the consulting services. If that seems within your budget, definitely reach out to Amy and myself after this. But we're also working on some other ideas in terms that are less expensive, but would provide more coaching and sort of feedback through the learning process of lean data. So we could also talk to you about that too, but we're sort of testing out ideas and how could we help people through this process, and implement lean data strategies more effectively, where you as the grant maker could pay for your grantees to be able to learn lean data, or people from your organization could learn it themselves and start to implement it across your portfolio.
Great, thank you. So I probably would like to follow up offline. And
Okay.
The Japanese institutions, sometimes the people who participate in the surveys may not fluently speak English, so they may not especially like to work with US-based organizations, but there can be opportunities, and definitely I'd like to do a lot of these things. So with US-based organizations, that may be a great fit.
Yeah, our team also has done surveys in different languages. So we've been able to customize to the region and language. It's just about finding people that can help you build and interpret those surveys in Japanese or whatever language you're working in. So
Okay.
I just put my email address into the chat box, so feel free to follow up about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think the other thing I would mention too there that Yoshi kind of alluded to was building building trust not only with the grantee organizations, but also with the people that you're directly serving. In that case, if they're elderly, if they're like speaking a different language, we've seen different strategies to help foster that trust between the people who are taking the surveys and the people who are administering them. So two strategies there. One is to really figure out what modality or what technology is going to be most appropriate for the customers you're serving. So for example, we've worked with an organization that took this course before called News Story Charity in Haiti, and they figured out that it was actually more effective in some cases to start with in-person surveys. So rather than jumping right to the technology solution, they started by going kind of door to door and talking to people and just using a tablet to more effectively collect the data, but to still build that in-person interaction before they started using technology. And then I think the second thing we've seen is really important is like in a lot of cases, people never see the results of the survey once they've actually taken time to participate in them. So figuring out some way, whether that's kind of sharing back a report or a visualization that gives the people who actually took the time to participate some kind of feedback or response that shows like how their input went on to make improvements or make changes. So those are just two other things about kind of the trust building part that I think Yoshi brought up that are really important. So thanks. Other questions from people who are joining here? Or if you just want to share a little bit about what you're working on, we're happy to provide any help or other resources that we can.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how you guys are applying, using lean data or hoping to use it for. You guys are shy. You don't have to be shy. We won't bite.
Hi, Jessica and Amy. It's Jackie again. For us, we really want to use lean data that will help us to develop every single thing that we do, because everything to date about building this community map has been built based on feedback. But we know that as we grow, we might lose that actual personal touch a little bit, but we want to keep it in through using lean data so that we don't lose track of our mission, or we don't suddenly let our egos take over and think we know what we want to do, but actually it's not what people want. And so, but we want it to be done in a way that is almost conversational, and as though people really feel that what we're asking them is being taken on board. And you know, I love the little bit about the chatbot, because if that can be done in an effective way, then it's like somebody's having a conversation and that we care. But I don't really know what I'm asking. I think I want to know so much about the subject so that we can be effective. And so every single little bit that you're sharing is part of helping us to develop that. And the timing is amazing. I mean, we're just starting, touch wood, to work with Devon and Cornwall Constabulary, and part of what they want is the project that we're going to do with them for a year is to collect that data and do lean data. And I said to them, well, let's see if we can work with you. I'm not sure whether our budget will quite go to that, but it would be really lovely if there was a team of people and projects that wanted to work on their lean data together and actually connect and share and collaborate and all feed off each other as to what each of us are doing. I don't know if that's something that Acumen are thinking of doing, and getting a group of people together so that we're all learning together at the same time and pace.
Yes, I think you are onto something. We are thinking about how to do this. I think especially in kind of a smaller, closed cohort of people who can more directly be trading ideas and getting feedback on each other's surveys and approaches and all of that. So yes, we are trying to build out that kind of lean data accelerator or a smaller community of practice for people working on this together. So I'm glad you're intuiting that these needs are something we are hearing from a larger constituency. So thanks for validating that too. And I think to just let Jessica jump in too, but I think to validate your larger point of like you have been trying very intentionally to design something that has been built upon feedback that takes the voice of the people that you're trying to serve into account. And people usually are doing that in the early stages using very direct kind of interactions with their customers or beneficiaries, maybe using an approach like human-centered design or lean startup. I think what's useful about lean data is it can kind of help you go to the next level of scale and use technology to leverage like the ability to listen to your customers at scale in a way that maybe once you do the one-on-one interviews, and you collect those initial feedback insights, that's very intensive and critical to the early stages of design. But as you get further along the lines, you still want to be able to listen to people and incorporate their feedback, but maybe just do it at a bigger volume. So hopefully that's what lean data can allow you to do to some degree. Jessica, anything else to add there?
No, I think you covered it well. I was just going to say specifically, I think the chatbot for you, Jackie, and also Typeform are good tools that you can use to be very conversational in terms of like talking with customers and getting feedback. But I know Alan had a question as well. And Alan, I think we heard you. You can try your mic again. If not, I can read out your question. Oh, no, I can't hear you. You guys hear him? Okay. Might be having some trouble. Okay. So Alan, your question is on, you took this course as a supplementary tool for collecting data, and you're not sure how lean data collection differs from a regular survey. And that in this process, you suppose you would experience not getting responses at times, and how do you approach these challenges? I'd actually love to know, unfortunately your mic doesn't work or isn't working, what sort of approaches you've used before taking or trying lean data. We can't hear. Standard surveys, phone calls, email. Okay, these types of collection. And what type of project are you working on? What are you doing the emails and phone calls and surveys for? Right. What sector are you working in? That doesn't matter. Amy, do you want to start on how sort of lean data differs from, I guess, traditional approaches to M&E?
Sure. I think there's a few fundamental differences. And mostly they're
education. Okay.
So mostly it's thinking about how to make it lean, right? So how to make it pared down just to the essentials of the kinds of data you need to collect in order to directly inform decision making. So we see in traditional monitoring and evaluation that sometimes there's these huge, like very lengthy survey instruments where the types of data you're collecting are necessitated by funders or by government organizations like that. So it's really trying to pare it down to the most essential information you need to collect in order to make decisions and then to fundamentally improve the product or service that you're trying to build. So that's one thing. The other thing I think is trying to make it more kind of delightful to your customers or end users that you are serving. So making it something that's enjoyable, that like I was mentioning when I was talking to Yoshi, that's something that's going to be directly fed back to them and used to help them see like why they should even provide this information. So it's more human-centered or more customer-centered in its orientation. So those are some of the traditional, or some of the ways it's different from traditional. It's just making it more connected to decision making it more delightful for the customer, making it directly inform kind of the business proposition and provide value directly to inform the development of a product or service, rather than just meeting the top-down demands of a funder or a government agency. Jessica, other things you would add?
Yeah, I would just build on that and say, like, in practice, like, that means being thinking about the survey taker as a customer and being a lot more thoughtful about the user experience and like how many questions they're answering, the ordering of the questions, does it make sense? Is the wording like is it like conversational, easy to understand, not using really academic-y language? That type of stuff. And then in terms of, yeah, the challenge is always trying to increase response rates or get the statistically significant number of responses that you're looking for, which isn't a ton all the time. It's usually somewhere around like 200 to 250, depending on your populations. But I think for our team, we've used things like providing incentives. So a free prize draw for Amazon gift cards here in the US and globally, or other e-commerce providers around the globe. If we're doing SMS surveys, we provide them with airtime credits, so they're not spending their own credits or money taking our survey. Yeah, not doing just like standard survey language, but taking a sort of marketing approach and writing subject headings or exciting sort of copy in the beginning to get people bought into and enrolled into wanting to take this survey for you, or providing their data. And so there's different things that we've tried to test, and it just depends on your audience too. Like we A/B test different email subject headings and copy to see which ones get more people to respond and fill out the survey. And I think everyone will have to do a bit of testing for themselves depending on their population that they're working with. Does that get at your questions, Alan?
Looks like Alan is working for Amani Institute. I'm looking at his course. Is that right? Alan, did I pull up the right assignments? You're working for Amani? Okay. And Nolan, you've been making some great contributions in the chat box, so thanks for doing that. Is there anything else that we can specifically address for you?
No, I'm all right. I feel guilty because I'm not very advanced in the course, and I should be, because I initially thought that I was taking the course a little bit in advance of needing it, because we are starting a volunteer group who is applying design thinking. I suppose you know what it is. Design thinking to charitable or community problems. And so there are two levels for us. There is our own group and understanding ourselves and how we can make it better for us working in our Design Thinking Montreal group, and also applying lean data to the community or charitable questions that we are dealing with. And it's like I'm a little bit early to do that for our group, a little bit late for our community project that's currently ongoing. So I was a little bit sitting into two chairs, but listening to you, I think I'm going to try a little bit on ourselves, at least putting questions in. And that's the reason I was thinking that to make it delightful to my core group members, I actually need to do a lot of work myself. So instead of asking them the question, which activities did you contribute to, I would have to go back and plow through memories, etc., and fill that up so that all they have to answer is what they like to answer about. I like this, I didn't like that, etc. So everything environmental, I need to do a lot more work so that I don't ask them to do it. So.
Yeah, I think your comment that like it kind of takes more work up front to thoughtfully design a really robust and useful lean data survey is right. I think it takes more intentionality on the part of the person who is designing the impact tool to do something that's really carefully and well designed, but then hopefully it's going to yield outcomes and data that are a lot more productive. So I think your instincts are right there for sure.
And we're looking at also repetition. I think there was a little snippet about repetition, but delighting your customer so that it's fun, so that you can address one aspect now, and then 2 weeks from now address a second aspect, and people would still be willing to answer is very, very important, right? You want continuity. This is you're into this project for the long term, etc. That's the way I see the usefulness of lean data as well.
So you mean like you would ask the same kinds of questions at recurring points, or?
No, sorry, I was referring to exactly that. That was a snippet, a video snippet in the course, but I was thinking actually differently, that when you want to actually limit your questions so that you can you keep a lot of user goodwill, and so instead of making a survey because you have you have one chance at it, actually assume that today you're going to address only one aspect, the major one, and ask 3 questions about it, and maybe 2 weeks afterwards, and after you've been able to return and say we've changed this, then now we're looking at this, 3 more questions. And I would really be looking at doing it this way.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. It's having the discipline to kind of limit the number of questions that you ask at each juncture, and then be able to show that you've taken kind of actionable steps towards like addressing or improving something before you're asking people for a whole nother allotment of their time or energy to complete more survey questions. I think that's exactly very helpful.
Right, since I'm lucky enough that I have a little bit of a captive audience, if you want, because I know my group and I'm not jumping from one project to another. So using it this way is going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I want to make sure we fully address Alan's question too about response rates, because I think that is something important to keep in mind. So some of it is kind of Alan's point that like if people start to trust you and that know that you're collecting information that will be used to actually make change, and like you're going to use their time effectively and well, that's one vehicle for like over time starting to improve those response rates. But Alan, you've probably gotten to it in the course. There is a video where Kat from our impact team specifically addresses the kinds of response rates that you can anticipate from different types of technology. So whether that's a mobile survey, whether that's an online survey, kind of the expected response rates that we have seen like across those different technologies. So that can be hopefully useful guidelines for you. But then I think you also really have to think about your user base, right? And like what would incentivize them to complete surveys. So in some cases, when we've been working with someone like smallholder farmers or, homemakers, we've added like cell phone credit. So if they complete a survey, they get an incentive that would motivate them to do that. In other cases, you might have to know your users best and figure out what other kinds of incentives you would add to help motivate survey completion. But that's another tool to think about. And I think I was reading some of your comments in the discussion forums, which were right on point. I think, you point out that like a lot of these things maybe are not rocket science, but when you actually think about how they have not really been effectively applied to social impact measurement in ways that are kind of reliable and robust and like thinking about the customer coming first, I think we often see that when people do the first reading, they're kind of like, this is not like anything that's like blowing my mind. And yet when you actually try to apply it in practice and be so disciplined and rigorous in the application, that's where you start to realize, A, it's challenging, and B, you can get kind of different results than you might have using other approaches. So I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, and I would just add, I feel like in practice, it's hard to apply when you have teams and deadlines. And even at Plus Acumen, we've been culprits of like collecting a lot of data, but not like revisiting it regularly or intentionally to inform like decisions we're trying to make. So just being able to like bring in this discipline of like looking through it, coding the data, putting together an analysis that synthesizes what you're learning and sharing it back. And then I think we talk about this in the course, but I really love how our impact team does little surveys or quizzes based off the results of the survey that they've done, and they give it to their internal team or the teams they're working with to answer the questions to see where there's big gaps in basically what people inside the company know versus like what their customers are saying. And I think that's a really great tool to one, engage people on your team with the data, get them excited to learn the results, and hopefully therefore use it, but also to debunk a lot of misconceptions where people sort of intuitively think one thing is happening when in fact the data shows exactly sort of counter that point or supports that point. So that's one thing that I think has been a fun addition to this, and also really helps to make sort of this discipline of like collecting data, revisiting, and actually using it more fun.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so happy to address any other questions that people might have. And just to give you a preview of what's to come, so this course is wrapping up soon, but you can download all the materials, keep them in the Dropbox folder. We also have a Lean Data field guide, which is available on Acumen's website if you're looking just for kind of a quick reference to take what you learned in the course and move it forward. As Jessica mentioned, we're also piloting a few different Lean Data offerings, so you can feel free to reach out to us to learn more about those. So one is an accelerator program that would be for a smaller cohort of Lean Data practitioners who are looking to refine their own Lean Data approach, getting to more coaching and resources along the way, and having that smaller community of practice to work with. The consulting services are something that are available to kind of larger organizations. And then we're also working on some new courses about different steps in the Lean Data process, and probably the most immediate one that will be coming out is a storytelling with data course that we're developing with someone at Google. So that will help you take kind of the results of your Lean Data analysis and think about how you actually communicate them to other people to get them on board, and start to embed them more directly in your organization to inform your work on an ongoing basis. So hopefully that will be coming out in the first half of 2018 too. Let's see, do we have another question? So Jackie, interested in the Lean Data Accelerator and the field guide. Great. I think, Jackie, the field guide is posted in the course, and then Jessica can follow up with more information on the accelerator too. Thanks. Great. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Jessica also put her email address there, and I will add mine too, so you can feel free to follow up with us. We will post a recording of this office hours sessions too, just in case you missed any questions or want to go back and review anything. That will be available too. Jessica, any final words of advice?
I was just going to say, if this conversation prompted any more questions, feel free to put them in the discussion, this discussion forum that Amy kicked off for this office hours as well.
Yeah, we're happy to address them. But thank you all for tuning in and for asking questions. It sounds like you're working on really exciting projects all around the world, from Denmark to Japan to the UK. So we really appreciate your time and your efforts in the course. It's been really exciting to see everything that's coming together. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day, evening, morning.
Thank you. Good day. Bye-bye.